And I've had my questions about Jalen Hurts, and I feel like I've kind of been more skeptical about him maybe than others. I still expected more than I saw, out of him yesterday by a long stretch. So, I've been kind of consistent, I feel like, in saying that Jalen Hurts cannot be your plan A this offseason, and I don't think he will be the Eagles' plan A.
Unfortunately, Birds fans, the offseason has arrived. And we should have seen it coming, but anytime it does hit you in the face, it is a little bit of a shock and a wake-up call, but we're going to deal with it all offseason. But first things first, we got to put yesterday to bed. Here to help us do that, one of the best writers in town covering the Birds. His website, Bleeding Green Nation, is a must-find for every single Eagle fan here in the Delaware Valley. Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation joins us here on Birds 365. BLG, let me get a look at you. You can't tell by these little cameras. He's a big boy. You actually look okay today. How are you dealing with the Eagle loss?
Well, I will say when you watch the Dallas Cowboys lose in embarrassing fashion, that's always a good thing, I think, for most people, except for the Cowboys fans, of course. So that was good, but obviously the Eagles game, not as good.
Yeah, Brandon, so who are you pinning this loss on more? I mean, it was a total calamity of errors, basically, on all three phases of the game. And, but who are you looking at saying, okay, this is what the Eagles need to do? First, number one priority this offseason.
It's hard not to start with the quarterback, guys. I mean, yes, were there other reasons the Eagles lost to the Buccaneers? Sure. I mean, Jalen Hurts is not literally the only reason the Eagles lost that game, but the Eagles weren't even competitive in that game. And the quarterback is a good position to start with because the offense obviously didn't do enough, weren't able to score in the first half, which is pretty pathetic, especially for a unit, that showed good ability down the stretch, obviously coming against not as good teams against the Bucs, but still for Jalen Hurts to go out there in that spot. And I've had my questions about Jalen Hurts, and I feel like I've kind of been more skeptical about him maybe than others. I still expected more than I saw, out of him yesterday by a long stretch. So, I've been kind of consistent, I feel like, in saying that Jalen Hurts cannot be your plan A this offseason, and I don't think he will be the Eagles' plan A. And it might end up coming to a point where the Eagles have to fall back on him. That just might be the reality of the situation, as we all can acknowledge, between the draft options and the free agent options, trade options, all that. But he just can't be your plan A.
And that's fair. I think that's a very fair way to look at it. But I, like you, believe that plan A is going to be very difficult to implement. If you believe that they need an upgraded quarterback, that's a great philosophy. But then what are you going to do to upgrade? Who are you going to get? What is going to be the card you're going to play to get a better quarterback? I don't know that there's a card to play. I don't know that it's a possibility. We know who the names are going to be. Is Aaron Rodgers going to want out of Green Bay? Probably not. Is Russell Wilson going to say, yeah, Philadelphia is my number one destination? Probably not. Is Deshaun Watson even going to be capable of playing in the NFL next year? We don't know. Where do they go if not Jalen Hurts?
I do think they are going to revisit Deshaun Watson. I've been expecting that a long time, just because they reportedly had a lot of interest in him offseason. And to your point, Jody, we don't know about his availability, but that did not deter them last year when they were interested in him. So I don't think it's going to deter them from at least investigating that. Again, who knows if they can pull it off, because Deshaun Watson has the no trade clause, and there's talk that he might want to go wherever Brian Flores gets hired. So, we'll see on that front. But I do expect them to look at that. They'll look at Russell Wilson. Again, he might not want to come here. They'll look at Aaron Rodgers, but I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers will not be ending up in Philadelphia next season. So, yeah, there isn't a great answer. The free agent options aren't really anything there, that you're really enticed by. So, obviously, the draft could hold some probably not surefire answers, but some interesting options as we go along the process. Right now, it looks like there isn't an obvious guy, unless you're a really big Kenny Pickett fan, perhaps. But I think, when it comes to quarterbacks in the draft, we tend to think about things in an absolute way, and they ended up playing out a different way. I always go back to how people said that Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota were so far above Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, and Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, for being as flawed as they are. I mean, they've started playoff games. And then the other guys are kind of more backup players. So not to say, that's the perfect situation, but just to point out that we don't always know with these quarterbacks in the draft. So there isn't a great answer. And that's why it's frustrating for the Eagles to be here in a spot where it looked like Jalen Hurts was progressing nicely, but you end the season on a bad impression.
One of the things that bothered me early in this game yesterday was I didn't think they were aggressive enough at their quarterback. I thought Tampa Bay dared them to throw and dared Jalen Hurts to beat them, and I think the Eagles should have accepted that challenge a bit, no matter how bad he was playing. But look, just they're stopping the run, they're putting up multiple guys in the box, they're blitzing safeties. Just let Jalen Hurts throw the ball no matter what he's struggling. Did you think Nick Sirianni was a little too conservative early in that game?
I think that's tough because I feel like, and then if they're passing early in the game, Nick Sirianni's getting killed for, not running the ball. I think it was fine to come out doing what the Eagles got them to this point and stick with their identity and run the football. But obviously you need to be able to pivot at a certain point, and they couldn't do that. And that was always the question. I think everyone watching this offense throughout the later half of the season, yes, they're doing some encouraging things, but it was never going to be a situation where you're just going to run the ball all the way to the Super Bowl, and you're never going to have a good, efficient, effective passing attack. So that was always going to have to happen. And I think there were opportunities there to be had. And Jalen Hurts, as he has done often during the season, he has struggled to see the field really well. And there were throws there to be made that he didn't make. And he held onto the ball. I believe he is the slowest time to throw in the NFL. And that's a big issue. He needs to see the field way better. He needs to get the ball out way quicker and needs to be accurate when he's throwing. And it just wasn't going for him yesterday.
All right, two questions. Two questions off your answer, PLG. First is Jalen Hurts and his ability to get rid of the ball on time. Very fair criticism. And I thought he might have been worse at that yesterday than any other game this year, that he just seemed too slow to pull the trigger. Am I right to be able to say that's something you can improve on? Because if Jalen Hurts is going to come back and be the quarterback of this team, you need him to step up. You need for him to become better. The level that he's at right now is just not good enough. My continued argument is, all right, well, but if not Jalen Hurts, then who? Who are you going to get? Who's better at that? Easier said than done. But can Jalen Hurts improve? That's a key aspect, an element of his game, correctly pointed out by you. Is that something you can improve on? There are some things, even your second year into the league, if you can't do, you're never going to be able to do them. But I believe the quick read, the ability to get the ball out, that decision-making process is something that can be improved upon. Or am I just wishfully thinking here?
I think it's all about to an extent, right? It's like, to what extent can it improve? Yes, he's 23. He's the youngest Eagles quarterback to ever start a playoff game. Yeah, he can get better, but how much better is the question. And that was something I was, wondering about him heading into this season. I just have a hard time believing we're going to see him improve to the point where he's, suddenly, a no doubt about it franchise quarterback, one of the very best passers in the league. I just think that's a big jump for him to make from where he's currently at. So yes, I think he can get better in that regard. But one thing I've been thinking about here too, in the aftermath of this loss, is like, who are the quarterbacks in the NFL that we look at and say, that team just gave him a little bit more time when everyone thought he wasn't good enough, and it really worked out? Like, I'm trying to think. I don't have the answer at the top of my head, but I'm trying to think about it. And I tend to believe that with a quarterback, like, you kind of know from the beginning if they have it or not. And, and that's not to say they don't improve along the way. I think you look at Josh Allen as a player who's gotten a lot better. Josh Allen is also a very different prospect from Jalen Hurts in terms of like a guy who's very raw, but had tremendous upside and like crazy physical ability. So, I don't really think that's a great one-to-one comparison there. So I kind of been thinking about that. And I think with Jalen Hurts, we have a big track record of him. I know he's young, but this isn't a guy who's like super raw and didn't play a ton in college. He's not like Trey Lance, who barely even played at North Dakota State or whatever, and obviously hasn't done anything in the NFL yet. But, with Jalen Hurts, there's a big sample size of him here going back to his college days. And there was a pretty big moment in a high-profile spot in a national championship game where he was pulled because he couldn't throw the ball well enough. And I think he's obviously improved since then, but clearly not to the point where there aren't still questions about his passing ability.
One of the issues – go ahead.
The other question I wanted to ask was the point that Jeff asked you about Eagles coming out, establishing the run, should they have moved away from it quickly? The only series that I had an issue with was the very first series. The Bucs go down and score a touchdown. Mistake. You shouldn't have deferred. Should have taken the ball. But we'll come back to that. That first series, it seemed like they came out and just decided we're going to run the ball, but we're going to try and run it on the edges. That has not been where the Eagles have done their best work. It's between the tackles. It's your 5 good offensive linemen against their defense. Mano a mano. We're going to win. We're going to get the push. We're going to get 5 yards. We're going to move the football. They came out, the offensive linemen were almost standing up. That it was looked like a college offense to me, that it was Jalen Hurts back at Oklahoma. No, this is not how you got to the playoffs, Eagles. Why aren't you drive blocking? That first drive, that first possession, that 1-2-3 punt annoyed the snot out of me. What do you think Sirianni was thinking there?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a fair criticism because I had the same reaction in the moment. I'm like, why is Miles Sanders bouncing to the outside? Why are they having him bounce to the outside? And I think there is some validity to that. At the same time, you do have Vita Vea in there. You do have Ndamukong Suh in there. Like those are pretty good interior players. So it's not as easy as saying it's a great matchup. And it's definitely going to work if you go to the inside as opposed to the outside. So I guess I get it from that perspective. But again, why not try, right? Why not go that route and rely on, Jason Kelce and your interior players? Obviously, they were starting Stu Opeta at right guard, which isn't ideal. So maybe they didn't fully trust him in there as your third string right guard. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair criticism.
Here's where it goes off the rails for me. Because I watched Sirianni in the post-game press conference and said afterwards, we believed we could come in here and win. Just making the playoffs. That's what we believe. Well, no, you didn't. Because the first thing you did was, they're good. We better adjust and do things differently than we've done to get us to the playoffs. Those two things do not add up. Either you did believe you could beat them and you go mano a mano, or you didn't really believe you could beat them. So we're going to have to do things differently because they're too good for us to do what we've been doing all along against them. Can't have it both ways, Coach.
I didn't know to respond to that, Jody. You're fired up.
Yeah, it ticked me off. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
So, Brandon, one of the issues I had too, and this has been an issue for me all year, and we've talked about this, the Eagles' lack of pass catchers. Outside of Devonta Smith, who for some reason was not targeted in the first half yesterday, I can't explain that, or Dallas Goedert, who didn't have his greatest of games, but he did make plays. Eagles got nothing. Jalen Reagor, as we all know, stinks. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's a stiff. He's just basically in there for special teams. Don't you feel like no matter who they bring in at quarterback this year, they have to get this guy better pass catchers, no matter who it is?
I do, and I think some of this goes hand in hand. Obviously, if Jalen Hurts doesn't overthrow Quez Watkins at one point yesterday, maybe he has a deep touchdown, and then obviously the other look earlier in the game where he didn't even throw his way. I think a better quarterback will lead to some improved receiver play here, and especially one who is capable / willing to force feed Devontae Smith, because I agree that Nick Sirianni should take some blame for Devontae not getting enough targets, because he has even said something to the effect earlier this season that he didn't necessarily believe in force feeding targets, which again I just don't agree with at all. But at some level too, the quarterback has to throw the guy the ball, and it doesn't seem, based on the evidence we have, that Jalen Hurts has ever been really inclined to force feed Devontae Smith over the course of a game in a serious way. And that's a big issue because Devontae Smith is really good. It's insane for Devontae Smith to have his first target come under the 2-minute warning, and the first play was wiped out by his first catch was wiped out by a penalty. That's just unacceptable. He finished the game with 11 targets, but who cares? The game was over by when he was getting all of those. So that's just inexcusable, I think. But I think Devontae and Dallas Goedert is a good starting point. I think Quez Watkins, not ideal if he's your second best, starting receiver, but if he's your third guy, I think that's fine. The Eagles obviously very, they need to add another guy into the mix. And Jalen Reagor, he can't be on this team. He makes the Eagles worse. It's not, I think that's very important to make that distinction, because there are some players who are out there and they're kind of just invisible and they're doing nothing, and that's not great, but they're not actively killing the team. Jalen Reagor is making the Eagles worse when he is out there. He's had 3 games this season with negative yardage, which is crazy, and obviously the big mistakes yesterday. And the Eagles weren't going to win even before he muffed that punt, but that really, sealed the deal and really should have sealed his career. I just don't know what there is left to see with Jalen Reagor. I think Chad Ochocinco is out here tweeting that, year 3 is going to hold the best for him, but I think that's just, pure delusion.
Really? Chad Ochocinco? Ooh, we got to listen to what he has to say. No, I'll take Jeff Kerr and Lee Gowton's advice over Chad Ochocinco. Rager should never be in an Eagle uniform again. All right, let's flip into the other side of the ball. Jonathan Gannon had a Jonathan Gannon type game. Didn't blitz early, didn't play press coverage, did the zone thing that they did all year long, and Tom Brady picked them apart for 2 touchdowns, and before you knew it was 14-0 Tampa. And then they made some adjustments. I'm not going to bend over backwards giving Gannon credit for it, because I think part of it had to do with Tampa was playing with a lead and wasn't working with the same urgency that they did their first couple of possessions. But they really did shut it down. They did get a couple of sacks and force Brady punts on 3rd down. They did improve. But again, it's the same old song. There's a nice adjustment within the game. Why can't you just before the game starts? Like from snap 1, be adjusted and be ready to throw different things Tom Brady's way. Give me a grading on Gannon yesterday and his defense's performance against the Bucs.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to crush the defense. Like, I think a lot of people might want to do that. You give up 31 points. We saw some of that soft defense we saw earlier in the year. I can't give them an F, though, because I think the defense looks worse when the offense can't stay on the field. And when your offense goes 3 and out, basically 3 straight drives to start the game against Tom Brady, like, you're asking for it. You can't play that way and expect the defense to get stops every single time. That's just not how it's going to work. I do kind of blame the defense, and this isn't necessarily Gannon, but I put some of it on the players. There were some drop passes earlier in the game, some tip balls, and the Eagles didn't make a play on them. And I know it's tough. It's not necessarily something you can always control and say it's super easy, but like, you can't let those opportunities go by when you're facing Tom Brady. You need to capitalize. You need one of your players to make your star players to make a big play and get a turnover. So I think the players are to blame in here too. I don't think the defense though is like at all the main reason why they lost this game. So I mean, it's hard for me to give him like an above average game. Maybe I'm going like C-, D+. I don't think. It could have been way worse. I think it could have been a lot worse. And I think the offense being as bad as it did, makes the defense look a lot worse. The offense could actually stay on the field and sustain some drives. I think the defense could have been respectable in this game to a point where the Eagles had a chance. I think the defense, in theory, at least gave them a chance, but the offense gave them no chance to win this game.
So with the 14, 15 for 19 picks in the draft, you're not going defense then?
I mean, I think it would be crazy for the Eagles to use all their picks at their spots, in part because if Jalen Hurts is back next year, I mean, and you're not trading for a 2023 first to be able to pivot, like, I just, what are you doing? I just don't, how can you, you can't do that. There's no reason to have like 100% confidence in Jalen Hurts. I think everyone, even the biggest Jalen Hurts fans, I think have to agree with that at this point. You can't just put all your eggs in his basket. So I think it would be crazy to use all those picks. I feel like they have to. It's not even like it would be nice if they can. Like, they have to go out and find a way to get a first round pick in next year's draft, the 2023 draft, to be able to have an option to pivot, whether that's trading that pick or using that pick on a rookie quarterback in a couple years. Like, they have to have that option in their pocket.
I agree with you, but again, it's more doable than the quarterback thing. But you can have a game plan. You can have what mentally works for you. But then you actually have to have someone on the other end to be able to say, yeah, that's a doable deal. A quarterback to come here, a team to trade a first-round draft pick plus something else just to get into a position where the Eagles are supposed to pick in the first round this year. As game plan, I agree 100%. We're going to have to wait till draft day to find out if they can actually pull it off. All right, BLG, Nick Sirianni's first year. All in. Everything he did from his misguided opening press conference to yesterday. Well, the bookends aren't good, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle that was pretty good. Where does Nick Sirianni sit in your eyes right now for what he achieved or didn't achieve year one, and going forward, how you think it looks for him as head coach of the Eagles?
I think there was more good than bad. And I feel not like Nick Sirianni is necessarily going to be one of the very best head coaches in the NFL, but I don't necessarily know that you need that, to win a championship. I think what we've seen from him gives me encouragement that he will not necessarily debilitate the team, from winning a title or going, or being a really good team, going the distance. I think there are some things I'd like to see improved in terms of obviously maybe adjusting quicker in the course of a season. Like it took time earlier this year. I'd like to see him be a little bit more aggressive. I think he finished the year something like 14th in fourth down aggressiveness. I think that's something that has to improve. That was obviously a big reason why the Eagles were able to win the Super Bowl under Doug Peterson, because Doug was really aggressive. So there are some things like that. On the whole, I think he had a good handle in the locker room. I don't think we saw major issues that really, debilitated the team over the course of the season that really blew up. So I think on a whole, I feel encouraged by him. I think the arrow is pointing up, but there's obviously a lot more to prove. I mean, the Eagles still have yet to beat a really good team under Nick Sirianni. So, that's something that has to be proved before we can just say, okay, this guy is 100% the real deal. There's no questions. He's amazing. So I'm encouraged, but there's still more to prove.
It's absolutely early to even think about how the 2022 season will play out, but I did this with Chip Kelly. I did this with Doug Peterson. I did this with Andy Reid. I did this with Ray Rivers. What would you consider a successful second season for Nick Sirianni and this team? Is it playoff win? What are your expectations for 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on, how the quarterback position obviously plays out. If we're assuming Jalen Hurts is back, it has to be a team that, at the very least, I think, if not win a playoff game, that looks like they can win a playoff game. And what I mean by that is beating good teams along the way next season, and not only beating up on the bad ones, and kind of giving that feel that, okay, they can go to the distance. And then again, even if they don't win a playoff game, maybe they're in it into the end and they lose on like a last second field goal or whatever. They have to kind of make some kind of step forward. Now, again, I think that the calculus changes. If you get Russell Wilson somehow or Deshaun Watson, whatever, then you're expecting probably at the very least a playoff win, if not more. But, I think, depending on who the quarterback is and everything, you'd like to see, that step forward. I would say that progress isn't always necessarily linear, though. And again, if Hurts proves out to not be the guy next year and kind of takes a step back and regresses, because I think one thing that we can mention is he had a lot of help this year, maybe not in terms of receiver talent, but the offensive line being good, and in general, the offensive staying in the team really staying healthy. So there's a lot of variables to this equation here. But obviously, you're looking for, get to the playoffs again, win a game, prove that you can actually beat some of these good teams and not just the bad ones.
Since you went offensive line, I'll go there as well, and I go there with much trepidation. Was yesterday Mr. Kelsey's last game as a Philadelphia Eagle?
It could be, right? I mean, he's given weight to retiring many seasons. I think it's
for 5 years now. We've had to sweat this out for 5 consecutive years. Are we going to make it a 6th? Or is Jason Kelsey finally going to throw in the towel? I sure as hell hope not.
It's year to year. He has 2 kids now. I think he kind of takes it into the offseason and kind of gauges how he's feeling and how he wants to do all of this. So, I don't think a decision has necessarily been made right yet. But it's possible. You can't rule it out. And obviously, I think he's still capable of playing at a high level if he wants to. But he's put a lot of wear and tear on his body over these years. And I think, again, with having a family and having a Super Bowl ring and making another All-Pro team and Pro Bowl and kind of having that Hall of Fame resume, I mean, it's hard for anyone to fault him if he decides that, my body can't take this anymore. I'm done. I need to get out. I want to live my life with my family and do some things post-football. And obviously, I think Jason Kelsey's going to have a great post-football career. Maybe you guys will be having him here in Birds 365 or wherever. I'm sure he'll be doing something that is visible. So looking forward to that. But obviously, yes, it'd be a huge loss. So I don't know. I can't rule it out.
You know what the tough thing is, Brandon? Not just Jason Kelsey's future, but I'm assuming Brandon Brooks ain't coming back. So where does Landon Dickerson fit on this? Would he be the center? Would he be the right guard? I mean, it seems like he's going to replace one of those two.
That's a really good question. I think Brandon Brooks, obviously, I don't even know if he'll play football again. We'll see. I'm pretty sure the Eagles will not be bringing him back, especially when they can, cut or trade him to clear some cap space. And we're already giving consideration to that before this year. I would think maybe that Samalo is the center, and the Eagles will slide him in there in part because you're also encouraged by what you saw out of Landon Dickerson at left guard, and you kind of might just want to keep him there, especially next to Jordan Mailata. Those are two very large guys and a lot of power there on that left side, and kind of build that continuity going up between them. So I would tend to think that's how they'll do it. But hey, they could also draft a center for all we know in the first round with one of those picks and have a guy there, and maybe you move Dickerson over to right guard and you have Samalo come back at left guard. So there are some options here. So it'll be interesting.
That's why I want to see Jason Kelce back. The Eagles have done a very good job, most of it because of Coach Stoutland, in building up depth along the offensive line. Now, depth across the rest of the team would be nice, and that's why they need to use their draft picks elsewhere. Last thing, BLG. Last season was a big Jeff Lurie offseason because they made the decision, mostly driven by him, to replace Doug Peterson, hire Nick Sirianni, and away we go. Is this going to be a big Jeff Lurie offseason? Or do you think he takes a step back, leaves it in the hands of his new coach and his general manager, those 3 first-round draft picks, doing the Lee Gowton suggestion thing, trade one back for another year? So maybe if the quarterback next year in the draft is there, get all of that, does just Jeff leave that in Howie's questionable/capable hands? And when I say does he, we know behind the scenes it's not going to be the case. But out front, being visible and telling Eagle fans what the Eagle organization is doing, are we going to hear a lot from Jeff Lurie this offseason?
And it's a really big offseason for the Eagles. A lot of key decisions to be made here. So I tend to think he will be, because I don't think he's sitting back for all of that when there are some, again, really important, critical decisions to be made. And I thought last year, was a lot of, as Jeffrey Lurie coined it, was a transition year for the team. But the offseason was kind of boring in some ways, in terms of they weren't going to have a lot of cap space to spend. We kind of knew they were going to have to shed salary at certain places. They had the draft picks, and, they could do, and they obviously made the trades with them. So there's some juice to that. But it's all kind of positioning, getting those future first round picks and making it about this offseason. It's about positioning it for this offseason to really, evolve the team, go from, okay, whatever, nice year in 2021 to now, how do we turn this into a real competitive team that can hang with the bigger squads, like the Eagles weren't able to do this year. So really big one. And I do think he will be involved, as I think he usually is. And maybe to his credit, to an extent of, obviously looking at where the Eagles were last year, and a lot of people saying, why is Jeffrey Lurie involved at all? Why is Howie Roseman still here? And the Eagles did do some good things that helped them turn around from where they were in 2020 to, a playoff team in 2021. But again, kind of like I said with Nick Sirianni, like some encouraging things, but a lot of work to be done still. And also some concern when you look at how, in the playoff game yesterday, you look at some of these these former first round picks, like 2016, Carson Wentz, not even on the team. 2017, Derek Barnett, his standout play was that big penalty that he had. 2019, Andre Dillard played one special team snap. He was basically a healthy scratch, didn't get anything out of him. And Jalen Reagor was hurting the team. Now, obviously, Devontae Smith is promising, but you didn't even use him. So there's a lot of concern here when it comes to actually hitting on these first-round picks.
All right, BLG. Good luck on your upcoming season, because you, like us here on Birds 365, now we got to go to work. It's real easy during the season when we got games to analyze and players playing. Now we actually have to work for a living and finding things to talk about the Eagles with the offseason upon us. We will be tapping you into plenty during the offseason. Want to thank you for hopping on as often as you did come on during the year. Always appreciate you, bud. We'll be talking.
Thanks, guys.
Brendan Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation does an outstanding job on his website, giving Eagles fans what they need insight. The insight today is not a pretty one, because they were beaten by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so the offseason begins. Jeff Kerr and I will continue to talk about it. Paul Domwich will join us in hour number 2. Our offseason is underway here on Birds 365.